Hello and welcome to our presentation on Embroidery Studio 3.0. Embroidery Studio 3.0 comes in three basic versions. It's lettering, editing and designing. Now our designing section of Embroidery Studio is a modular system that will help you create whatever multi-decoration design you can imagine. Screen printing, bling, sequins, embroidery, the whole works. You simply add modules to grow with your requirements and your imagination. There are three groups of modules that you can add: creativity modules, productivity and decoration modules. The creativity are the ones that a lot of us are familiar with: shading, open fills, curve fills, custom splits, motifs, the new freehand tool, photo flash. In productivity, one of my all-time favorites is Offsets Advanced. There's also auto shaping, team names, auto digitizing bitmaps, vector drawing, which is a great tool as well, auto arranging. In the decoration, bling, virtual decoration, alphabet creator, which is a fantastic tool for those that do a lot of font work for larger customers and they need a variation of a font that's not included in the system. You can create your own fonts. Sequencing, chenille and Shiftly. So it's really a complete package now, and it's packaged with Corel X6. So what's in the this webinar that we're going to cover? Well, there'll be a brief introduction to setting up your work area under the Setups Options menu. We'll have an awareness of properties. We'll take a peek at the Fabric Assistant, and we'll look at a basic work setup, setting up your work area. But the main focus will be on three of the main tools in the software. So what do these features look like? Well, our Fabric Assistant is this new template icon dialog box at the top. Whoops, sorry about that. Setting up a work area is under our options menu, but what we're particularly looking at, as I said before, is our run stitch, our input A and our fusion fill tools. And we'll digitize a simple design. We'll turn this graphic into this piece of artwork. Okay, let's go across to the software and have a look. So when you open your screen first time, you'll be presented with the Auto Fabric Assistant screen. Now I'm not going to spend much time on it at the moment, but just take note that we have pre-selected pure cotton. There are a number of fabrics we could choose from here, but we'll stick to the pure cotton at this stage and just go OK. Alright, now before we move into the digitizing area and have a look at those tools, I'd just like to look at our screen and work area setup. On the left hand area, I would normally have my digitizing tools, my navigation tools that we move through the design by 1 stitch, 10 stitches, 100, by thread trims, a very important tool, by functions, color, segments, objects, and the beginning and the end of the design. So left or right clicking on any of these icons will move you through the design, left to the beginning, right to the back end of the design by these segments, by functions, etc. These are our digitizing tools. These are our select tools, our reshaping tools, and our master toolbox here. Across on the right hand side, we've got our object properties, our color object list, and our flyouts that will come out when we click on them or when we require them, and we can lock them into place or hide them. Now on the top here we've got our arrange tools, or align tools at least. The name it just escapes me now. A stitch effects toolbar, so jagged edge, mitered corners, etc. are all in that toolbar. And our stitch types and our view settings, so we can view true view, stitches, just the vector files, stitch points, etc. Now oftentimes I've been telephoned to say I've lost my toolbars. Well, that's understandable, but it's really easy to get them back. If we click anywhere in this top area or anywhere in the grey area with a right click, the options to display our toolbars will appear. So if I, to keep this open and turn the options on and off, just right click on the tick and you can see they're turning off. Right click again and they will reappear. At the bottom of the list, I'll just right click up here to turn it on. At the bottom of the list is our digitizing tools. So they'll appear anywhere on the screen and we can drag and drop them to where it suits our style, where we've got enough room. And the docker toolbar, so I'll just come up here, the docker is this toolbar here, and if you lose your stitch drop down list, that's where you'll bring it out again, the color palette editor, etc. So if you want to unpin it so it'll fly back to the side, you just unpin it there. Okay, so the two boxes that I like to have open when I'm digitizing are the color object list and our object property list, and if I hit the little drawing pin it will lock it into place, so it'll remain there until I unpin it. The other thing I said we'd look at is our options. So under setup and options, we'll just look at this very briefly. We'll just look at the general tab, and I suggest that you play with this, and most of it's self-evident, so just open the setup and options tab, and we'll look at two or a couple of options that should be ticked all the time. One is closest join, so that it will automatically apply if you've got two objects of the same color that are touching each other, it will automatically remove the start and finish points so that it runs through those objects without any thread trim. The other thing is to run the small stitch editor, so that when you save the design there are no stitches under a set size, and I like to have the crosshair cursor turned on because it allows me to align the object that I'm digitizing with other objects on the screen. Okay, so come back and have a look at those at any time later. There's your grid settings, etc. But play with it, that's good. But what we're here for today is to actually look at the tools. So the tools we'll be looking at are Input A, the Running Stitch tool, and the Fusion Fill tool. So they're out of three different sets. These are column tools. So you input the width of the column. This is just running stitch tools, and these are perimeter tools. So let's have a quick look at how each of them work. My running stitch tool, if I select it, if I left click it, its properties box will open on the right hand side in the object properties. So it's already set there, and the properties will be displayed. We'll discuss those properties in another session. But to digitize, just click on the screen, and all we're doing now really is digitizing a vector shape. Nothing to do with stitches, just the shape. Now left clicking will cause angles, and right clicking makes a curve. And that's the same protocol through the whole system. Left clicks always produce hard or angular nodes, and right clicks cause or create round or curved nodes. If I hit enter, the stitches are now created according to those properties, and we can see that object appears in our color object list, and all of its properties are reflected there too. If we change the color of it, it will reflect in the object list, and if we change the properties here, those properties will be reflected in the actual object. So I've got a 5mm stitch length now, and we've got 98 stitches. I'll bring it back to 2.5, and we've got 130 stitches. So it's a dynamic change. It doesn't matter if you change it on screen or in the properties box, the change happens everywhere. Okay, so that's our running stitch tool. If, say for example, we wanted to digitize a circle, you would simply select the tool, left click, and I use the grid here to create my circles. I come out to and down to, right click, down to and into, right click, out to and up, and left click on the beginning point, the start point, and there we have a circle. And from there you can resize it to whatever size you want. If you hold the shift key in, it'll move in on the center. If you don't hold the shift, release the shift key, it'll drag out from the point that you've selected. Okay, now one interesting thing, we can look at that right now, and it's the same again with all of the objects. If we collect those nodes, and you see that they're round nodes, if we hit the space bar, it'll change them to square nodes, and we'll create a square. Okay, so let's have a look at our Input A tool. This is a column tool, and it's used to create columns of stitching of a varying width. So the input method is to input your first point, move across to the other side of the column, and the little measuring tool there will show you how far you've moved, so 5.46 millimeters. Click, move down along the column, click again, click again. You can see where I like to use the crosshair cursor, because I know that I'm directly under that top point. Although there's another trick here. If I hold my control key down, you can see that the line jumps in 15-degree steps. If I release the control key, the line will follow the cursor. So I'll just do that again, hold the control key down and it'll jump. So it's really easy to get a perfectly level or 45-degree angle and horizontal lines. That's just a little trick, holding the control key down when you do that. So I'll just delete those objects. So Control A, which is a Windows command, we'll select them all and hit the delete button. And the third tool that we're going to look at today is our Fusion Fill, or Input D, and it's a perimeter tool. So this does a heap of stuff and a lot more than what we're going to cover in this short video, but you simply walk around the perimeter of the video, hit enter, and the cross-hatched area will appear, and that's just saying to us this is the area that's going to be digitized. And if we look at the bottom of the screen down here, and it's not exposed, we want which box do we want here? Prompt bar. No, the prompt bar. So it should be telling us down here somewhere. Ah, there it has appeared there now. Here's another trick too. If you want to, if you've begun digitizing and you want to come off to select another tool or display something, or down here, hold your shift key down and you can move off the work area. So that's a good tip. But the prompt bar down the bottom here is saying enter point 2 on boundary 2. Well, I've just entered the first point. There's the second point, third point. Holding my shift key down, it's saying enter point 4 on boundary. So what we're doing here is actually creating a shape to cut out of the outside shape. Look down here again, and it's looking for a point on a third boundary. Well, I'm not going to cut any more holes out of it, so I hit enter. It's saying enter the entry point. Hold that shift key down again. Entry point, so I'll nominate that. Exit point and stitch angles. And I can have one or as many stitch angles as I want. And then we've filled that shape. I've hit enter and filled the shape with stitches. So fantastic tool, and we'll look at some of its capabilities later. I've just changed the stitch. The property that I changed then was the type of stitching. So it was a satin stitch, which is reflected in the properties box. So I can say, okay, I want tatami stitch. So there's two ways to do it. Either use the shortcut icon at the top, or come over to the properties box and change the stitch type. Okay, I think I've covered everything that I said we were going to do in the introduction. Oh, one other thing, and we need the easiest way to demonstrate this is the Input A tool. If I zoom into this and make this object wider, you can see that our properties have changed. We've gone from a center run underlay to a zigzag underlay, and that's happened when we've made the object larger. Why has that happened? Because our Auto Fabric Assistant, the thing that we ticked right at the very beginning, knows that we were going to digitize this for pure cotton. So it said this is the most appropriate setting for this object at this width. Now let's see what happens when we change the fabric type. So if we go to a stretch knit, it opens up the zigzag stitching. Terry toweling. It'll put a double zigzag in for us. Now, as you become more advanced and more used to the system, you can come in and override those settings, and you may well want to do that. You may not agree with the settings that the Auto Fabric Assistant has set, but it's a great time saver. If you're learning and you don't have to worry about these property settings, the Auto Fabric Assistant is something that'll save you heaps and heaps of time, and in most cases give you the right solution. So there's just a little tip, but you can override it later. But let's get onto actually using the tools first, and then we can look at the properties in another session. Okay, so File, New from Template, and it'll bring up our Auto Fabric Assistant. Go OK, and there we are. Now the next thing, I want to bring an image or a graphic file into the software. So import graphic, and I'll import our butterfly. Now there are more sophisticated ways to resize this butterfly, and we'll look at those in another session as well. But basically we can see that because these grids are 10 millimeters across, we've got 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 millimeters, so that's fine. And if I hit M for measure, is another way to tell, I can measure across the red bit. That's 1.7, which will make a really nice satin stitch. It's 61.982 high, so it's an appropriate size for a chest embroidery. So once we have the image on the screen, it's a pretty wise move to lock it into place, because we don't want to be halfway through digitizing the design and find the jolly thing moves, especially if we're zoomed right in and we just don't notice what's going on, and we've moved the design. We've got to realign it all. So the way to lock it into place is either use the shortcut letter K, or use under the Arrange tool, select Lock, and you'll see the small black lock appear beside the object. Now we can do that with any object, anything we digitize, any graphic or whatever's on the screen, we can lock into place. So now I can't select it and move it. Alright, the next decision we need to make when we're digitizing is what order do we want to digitize the objects. And to me, the body would be the last thing we would do, because I want the body to cover the ends of the wings here. I want the ends of these running stitches to be covered by the red border of the wings. So that'll be the the first thing to do. So it'll be the detail in the wing, then the wings, then the body. And now we've got to digitize this with as few thread trims as possible, and there is no reason whatsoever to have more than 3 thread trims in this design. That is one after each color change, because we can cover these run stitches with other objects. We can run under those and join these objects up, and there'll be no thread trims at all. But there are a couple of tricks that we're going to use. What I like to see in this case is two run stitches everywhere. And you'll see when we begin to digitize, there's a few decisions that we need to make. I'll show you a technique that I call rubber banding, and if we don't use this technique, we either end up with 3 run stitches in some places, or a thread trim. So we'll just work through it and I'll explain that to you as we go. Incidentally, there's no reason now with our object color list on the right hand side that we have to digitize in the order that it's going to be stitched out, because we can resequence objects. But we're going to digitize it in that order now anyway. So we select the running stitch tool, select the color, and I've decided, you can start anywhere you like, but I've decided to start at, just change my mind, I'll start down here. I'll start right there. And I'm going to run a little short running stitch here, because the rest of these stitches I want to return to that point where the white cross is. So we'll continue on. Now I don't have to digitize right, the beginning of this line didn't have to be right on top of the previous object, so long as it's within 1 or 2 millimeters. And I'll show you later, if we have time, how we set our connector values over here. I'm holding the shift key down again. How we select our connector values so that there's no thread trim created there. We'll actually give the software instructions to say you can jump 2 millimeters without thread trimming. So right clicks along these curved lines. That was a left click at the end. Left click there, left click, right click, sorry, left click. Now I could come back down here and do this one here, but I won't. I'll just hit enter to complete that object, and you can see that it's added into our object list. Now here's a really neat tool. If I select the backtrack tool, it will duplicate that object that we just created, but run back so that the end point of the second object is here. So what we've done in this object, we started here and finished, where did we finish? Up here somewhere. And this one, we started there and finished back here. So we've avoided a thread trim here again. So I'm back at this point. I could backtrack that one actually too if I wanted to. Well, let's do that. So it's selected there. I'll backtrack it, but it's out of sequence. So we just drag it down, and now our running stitch is finished there. So as I mentioned before, you can resequence anything. The start and finish point of this one are here and there, and the start and finish point of the first one are here and there. So it runs to there, runs out, runs back, and then runs back. And we've got 4 objects in our color object list. So reselect the tool. There's a dozen different ways to do these designs, and probably I find that if I come back and have to redigitize a design, I'll do it a different way the second time around. It's just a lot of personal preference. Okay, so we've digitized this object, the last one on the list. I want to backtrack it. It's added it to the list, but what's happened? We've got 2 running stitches everywhere except here where we've got nothing. So we could, does that mean we run back out and do that and have a risk a little gap or not quite meeting there? No, we don't need to do that. This is what I call our rubber banding technique. Now have a think about it. We've got 2 run stitches, one out here and one back. So there's 2 run stitches on top of each other on these pink lines. What I'm going to do is zoom in to this point. I'll turn the drawing off. The shortcut for that is the letter D. And I'll turn my reshaping tool on. So they're the nodes that I digitized. I'm just going to put another node on one of those lines. It doesn't matter to me which line it is, because there's the other one that's still there. But this one I've rubber banded or stretched out. I put another node on that bit and drag it down. You can see there's an in and an out. So there's the double stitch line there. Put that right back on there. So we've still got the 2 and we've got two out here, so we stretched that line or rubber banded it. I turn my drawing back on and drag it down to there. Zoom in. Now we've got two lines to deal, two stitch lines, the out one and the back one. So I'm just right clicking on them, creating a round node and dropping them on top of each other, and we've got two perfectly placed running stitch lines. Shift Z will zoom out, and if I go to the beginning of the design, as I mentioned in the introduction there, click on that icon, it'll take me to the beginning, and everything's turned yellow, which indicates to me that it's unstitched. We're back at the beginning. Why is it turned yellow? Have a look at our what I call the Rubik's Cube down here, and I've set it so that anything that's unsewn comes out yellow. Okay, it's a neat little trick, and I've made my guidelines bright blue because they'll stand out on any white background. Okay, so just moving further down the travel toolbar, and I want to make sure that there are no excess trims in this design. So if I right click, it's going to take me through the design by thread trim, and the only thread trim there is at the end of all of the objects, so we're in good shape. And I know that I'm at the end there because here we are at stitch 148. If I come back to the beginning, we're at stitch 1. Right to the end, stitch 148. So no thread trims, good deal. And we're nicely positioned to come up and do the front wings. So we will just select the running stitch tool, make sure I'm within a couple of millimeters of the last object, the previous object that we just digitized, hit the enter, and there's another little freestanding object. Now I'll digitize out, right clicking, right clicking, right click, right click into the red area, because I don't mind that there's going to be extra stitches here because it's going to be covered by the red stitching. A left point there to give me an angle so I can come straight back onto this curved line. So these are all right clicks coming around the curve. Now I've got a decision to make here. It doesn't matter which way I go really. Right click, left click, right, right, left, left. I'll miss this one because I'll rubber band it. Right, right. I'll just put a left click at that junction there. And there we go. And just backtrack it. It adds it to the list, and you'll find we've still got we don't have any thread trims there. Now I'll select the reshaping tool and do my rubber banding trick again. So I click on the line to create another node, drag it away, and create another node and put it right on top of the other one. Now how am I zooming in? Just rolling the mouse forwards and backwards. It's a new feature in the latest versions of the software. You get some of these things you wonder why it didn't happen years ago. Okay, so there we are there, and if I look at that, they're not quite meeting. One of these nodes somewhere is not exactly on top of the other, so we can fiddle around all we like and maybe get it right, maybe not get it right. Looks like the problem's down here, but I'll just click on that line and create another node and drop it on top. So Shift Z to zoom out again, and I think we've missed another bit. Yeah, this bit here. So I'll zoom in there. Now I use a different zooming method out of habit there. If I hit B on the keyboard, I call it B for box, and then drag around it, it'll zoom into that point. So there's, like in most Windows type programs, there are a dozen ways to do the same thing. So Shift Z, turn my drawing back on. The icon for it is this fellow here, or the shortcut is the letter D. Drag that up there, and I'd say we're pretty right. Okay, so where are we? Turn the drawing off again, hit the escape button, check if we've got any thread trims. We haven't. Fantastic. Turn the drawing back on, and we'll run out and do the antenna. Now I could run straight out into this antenna, but when I backtrack it means I would come straight back to this point. So we will save a few stitches, not many, but I just finish that object there, then run out here, finish that one, hit the enter button. Now I'm going to introduce input A here. I'm going to change the artwork a little bit. I'll just put a small bulb at the bottom or the top of the antenna. Okay, now because we engaged closest join, remember, in our options here under the general tab, apply, where was it? Closest join. The start point of this object will be here. The end of it is up there where the cross is. Now I'm going to select this one here and duplicate it. So just backtrack it. But what's happened? It's backtracked it immediately after the first object. We need to drag it down under so it will return back down here. Let's have a look and see where our start and finish points are now. There's going to be a thread trim here. The finish point of that object's up there. The start point of the next object is there. So if this is less than 2 millimeters, there won't be a problem, but I'm looking in there and I can see that dotted line which is telling me there's going to be a thread trim. So let's just test it. We'll turn our drawing off, go to the beginning of the design, move through by machine function, and there we have it down here. It's going to be telling us it's a trim. It's not. I haven't got something turned on, but we've got 344 stitches. I'll move on to the next thread trim. We're at 365, so there's a thread trim there. How do we solve the problem? Easiest way is just select it all and go to our shortcut that says apply closest join, or the shortcut for that is letter J. Bang. Now we'll move in, look at that point, look at our start and finish points, and they're both in the same spot. So it's generated a little run stitch in that area there. Beginning of the design, move through by thread trim, and we don't have a problem. Turn the drawing back on, zoom back in, run stitch, across to the other antenna, hit enter, continue on. So we're creating another object, and hit enter, shift Z to zoom out. Here's another nice little trick. Too lazy to digitize that again, so I select it, right click it and drag it down, click on it again and rotate it around this center point. Not quite lined up. Bang, pull it down, very good. Select the run stitch out, backtrack it and resequence it, and we're probably going to end up with the same problem. No, we're not going to end up with the same problem, remember, because we dragged this object down and the start and finish point of that object were at the bottom of the object, so the start of this one is there, so we will have no thread trim there. Fantastic. Just to check it, left click to the beginning of the design, right click to go through the design by thread trim, and there's no thread trim. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. I've got a choice of tools here, and I can use either our input A or our fusion fill for the wings, and I'm going to use both. I'll use input A for the bottom wing and fusion fill for the top wing, just to show you a couple of different techniques that are available. So I'll select the tool, left click it, its properties show on the right hand side, select my color and zoom in to where I want to start. Now, why am I starting the bottom wing first? Because I want these stitches to turn around and blend nice and neatly in with the top wing. I want the top wing to cover the bottom wing. So zoom in here. Now here's a trick or something, a problem you can fall into. You can digitize too close. And sometimes you need to get right in close to your work, as we did then. But if I continue at that zoom level, I'm going to be digitizing all along the line. Far too many nodes. If I zoom out, I can spread those nodes out to make the job quicker and much more accurate. Now, when we get into tight curves, you will find that you need to put more nodes in, obviously. But when we're on larger curves or straight lines, you just hit the high points. Takes a little bit of practice, but it's not difficult and is a lot quicker. So one reason I like input A, and you'll see in a moment that Fusion Fill will do a magnificent job of this, and probably an easier job of this area down here. But one reason I like the input A, I've got more control over how it ends. Oftentimes you'll see this column of stitching come straight in there and just finish square off. That means when we come around with a flow of stitches around the outside here, the stitches coming around this way will pull these stitches apart. But here we've sort of blended them in and we'll get a better merge. It's like some people never learn how to merge into traffic. Okay, so now we'll select our input D tool. Our color is still selected and we've still got satin stitch selected. I'm going to zoom in here. Now I'm not going to move the start and finish point. I don't have to, because remember the software is clever enough to move the start point of this object that we're digitizing now up to this point here. It'll put a travel run in from here down to there, or move the start point up to here and then travel run down to start the stitching. We'll have a look and see what it does when we finish it. But this is a perimeter tool, so we walk around the perimeter. Now if try to force yourself not to put too many nodes in, and you'll get better at it. If you don't and you keep putting them in too close together, you'll just be obsessed by doing that. You'll waste time, and the truth is you won't get as good a job. You have to put a lot more nodes around tighter corners, as I mentioned. But if you miss one, you can come back later and put it in, or move a node that you've already digitized. So I come to within proximity, a close proximity of the first stitch, and hit enter. And you can see this tool will now fill the object with cross hatching. That's telling me that it's going to put stitches in that area. We've missed this here. We'll wait until we've finished digitizing the object, and I'll come back and I'll edit that area. But if we look down here in the bottom left hand again, you'll see that it's saying enter point 1 on boundary 2. Well, the first part of the object that we digitize is the first boundary. We've completed that because the cross hatching is coming up. So what it's saying to us is, do you want to cut a hole in this object? And for the fun of it, we will. So I'll just continue to digitize a little object here and hit enter, cuts it out, and it's looking for point 1 on boundary 3. There's no end to it. I don't want to cut any more holes in it, so I hit enter again, and it's asking us for an entry point. So I can click here, I can click wherever I want, but I'm going to let the software do it. So I'll just hit enter once, and it's then asking me to enter some angle points. So if I do want to do it myself, I can click the angles in. Oops, I double clicked there. So just backspace, I think I'll undo that. It did. And we really don't know. I'll put another one in there and enter, and it'll create the stitches for us. And it's cut a nice little hole in the top there. Now if we want to edit any of those nodes, and I do, I'll just put another node on there, another one there, and just change that. Now I want to, you can see the square nodes are telling me that they were left input points. If I select it and hit the space bar, it'll change it to a round input point. And the space bar again. There we go. It's pretty slick. You can do that with the input A tool, but not nearly as quickly, and probably not as well. If I want to add more nodes to well, I can change the direction nodes simply by changing the stitch angle tool there. change the stitch angle by changing the stitch angle tool. But if I want to add more in, I select this tool here, stitch angles, and I can add them. Hang on, just select it. Whoops, select it. Select my stitch angle tool, and I can add nodes in wherever I want to. I'll zoom in, just to refine the angle a little bit. Okay, so now let's do our check. Beginning of the design, move through by thread trim. We know the blue's okay and the red's okay also. So what happened down here? Where is the starting point of that object? It's down here. So let's have a look at what happened after this object was finished. So I'll select, where's the tool? I'll select the stitch here. So, okay, let's go to our slow redraw tool. So we'll go to the beginning of the design, Shift R. We'll bring our redraw tool up, and it'll go through all of the detail of the wing. Now it's the underlay for the wing. Now remember, I started digitizing down here, but the closest join feature said, hey, that doesn't make any sense. I'll digitize back this way, putting a running stitch underlay in, and then it starts here. So it's resequenced these pieces so that there is no thread trim in the design. Okay, so it finishes there. If I wanted to change that, go to my reshaping tool, this fellow, where is it? I've lost him. This fellow here, and move the finish point to wherever I want. And that'll be a much better place to put it, I think, in this design. So I'll move to the end of the design again, and I'm going to make the body of this little insect black. Select black. We can use either of those tools that we looked at, Input A or Fusion Fill. And I think I'll use Fusion Fill. So just walk around the perimeter of the little beastie. And hit enter. The cross-hatched area is going to be filled with stitching. It's asking me to enter point 1 on boundary 2. That is, do I want to cut a hole in it? No, I don't. So I hit enter again. It's now asking for an entry point. I don't care. It's asking me for an angle point. I don't care. Let it do it itself. It's done a perfect job. Hit enter again to confirm it. And there we go. Turn our true view on. And there's our little insect. Now, if we want to, we can change the stitch type to tatami. That's good. Now in the demo, in the artwork, that's how it was. We finished the job. But in one of those slides earlier on, I showed a butterfly with a filled-in coloured wing. So not difficult to do at all. Same tools, input D, select another colour, and simply digitize around where we want the piece to go. Enter, enter, enter. Now when you're doing this, make sure that you extend the piece that you're adding well into the red area, because there's going to be you don't want a gap between it. The other obvious thing you're saying to me is, this is on top of the other objects. It should be stitched first. Well, no problem at all. Just close our slow redraw. I'll just change the color of it. You know, we've got a little something funny's happened here. If I look and see the little outline around there, let's turn our true view off and our reshaping tool on. It's telling me that there's another object. I'll turn the stitches off. What's happened here is that I had the body selected when I began to digitize this filled area, and it thinks that the body is a hole in the filled area. So I'm just going to undo what we did then, Control Z, Z, and we're back to the body shape. I will deselect it by hitting the escape key, turn my stitches back on. Now nothing's selected, we're free to go again. So I'm glad that happened then. It shouldn't, it's just hurrying along. Instead of deselecting an object when you finished it, it remained selected. I continued on digitizing it and it thought I was cutting a hole in it. Okay, so digitize around the shape. And the other thing I didn't do, and I don't think I've done this time, is select another colour. Now I've made that a bit rough. Enter, 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 and enter again. It's nominated its own stitch angle points, and as I said, the obvious thing here is that it's out of sequence. Just drag it back to the top and turn out true view. You can see it's now stitched first, but I can also see that it extends out too far. So reshaping tool, just drag that node back in, and while we're at it, we may want to change a stitch angle. Okay, that's looking better to me. So hit the escape key to deselect everything. It's something that I do subconsciously, not aware that you're doing it most of the time, but it's just a safety thing. While you're digitizing, if you've finished an object, hit escape. Now, disengage is a tool, which is a bit of a pain, but it's one of those things I've just gotten used to. So I'll select cyan, and again, we're going to have the same sequence problem because I went to the end of the design again, but that's no big deal. Enter, enter, entry point, don't care, angle. Now I hit a key then, and it's automatically put some stitch angles in, and it says down here, press enter to accept or space bar to discard the angles. I'm going to hit the space bar, and it's put them in anyway. Goodness me. Okay, well, so we just changed that, and it's just got one. There were a couple of stitch angle points in there, and it deleted those. It had to have a stitch angle, so it took. I noticed there's a little one down here, so it's just left it with one stitch angle in this design, and that's probably all we need here. But let's say we want to fan it out a little bit. Let's come to our stitch angle tool, and we can drop that one in and drop that one in, and it'll fan those stitches out a little bit for us. And the other thing I want to do now is under our effects button, go to decorative and turn on some jagged edge. Whoa, that makes a difference. Now I'll just have to draw that in a little bit. Maybe change that stitch angle there so we don't get this bigger problem there, and resequence it. We want it to be done after the yellow. Beautiful. Hit the escape key, select the tool again, select another color, and just enter, enter, enter until the stitches appear, because I can change my stitch angles later if I wish to, which I'm doing right now. And come into my effects again, put some jagged edge on it. Now it's put it on the other side. I can never work out which side it's to go on. There are sides 1 and 2. You can do both sides or just one side, and that's how I do that. And relocate it in the design, and all is looking pretty good. So I hope that's been interesting for you. I can't think of anything. If you have any questions, just email me at training@wilcom.com, and There you go. Oh, one thing that I would like to look at again, just to reinforce the idea of the Auto Fabric Assistant. If I have a look at our stitch, our edge stitching here, and go to our underlays, it's a center on underlay. Let's select that design. I'll zoom out and make it a whole lot bigger. Select it again. We've still got a center on. Oh, we haven't made it large enough. If I distort the design, still a center on. Okay, Shift Z, Control All, select it all. We'll make it humongous. Look at our edge run, and we've well, it is the edge run around the design, but it's got an edge run underlay now and a zigzag. So great tool, that Auto Fabric Assistant. There's one other thing that I wanted to mention too. I just want to check whether we've got any, now that we've resized this thing, have we got any thread trims in it? So I'll move through, none there, none there, none there, which is what you'd expect. Hello, we've got one in our running stitch area there. We've got 2, 3, 4. That one's okay, but we've got 3 that we don't need. The red's okay, and the black's okay. Now, why has that happened? Well, it's because we've made the design so large that the gaps between the end of one running stitch, like the end and the beginning of the next one, have increased. The distance between them has increased. And that's all to do with connectors. We probably should have left this for another section because it does get a bit involved, but let's see how we solve that. I'll simply change our connector values here so it won't tie off unless it jumps more than 6 millimeters. It won't tie in unless it does more than 6 meters, and it won't trim unless it jumps more than 6 millimeters. So let's see. Sorry, I didn't have the design selected. So change that to 6, change that to 6, and change that tie in to 6, and test it again. Beginning of the design, move through by trim, and we solved the problem. Now you ask me, what's the difference between after and inside an object? Well, that's for another session. So come back, give me an email if you've got any topics that you'd like discussed in any webinars. Email at training@wilcom.com. Thanks very much, and thanks for joining us. Catch you later.